Welcome back to Photoshop Basics on PSD Tuts Plus. I'm Martin Perhiniak, and today I'm going to talk about how to create fast but precise selections in Photoshop. I'm going to use this image as a new background for this other image with the mountaineer. So I would like to change the background, and for that I'm going to create a quick selection and use that selection for masking out the background of this image. I'm always using masking instead of using erasing because I don't want to do destructive changes to my layers. With masking, you'll never change any pixel in your designs, and that's the biggest advantage when you work with masks. So I would like to show you a great selection tool called the Quick Selection tool. This is here in the toolbar. It's the fourth tool and it's grouped together with the Magic Wand tool, but I prefer to use the Quick Selection tool nearly all the time. This is like a brush, so you can use the same keyboard shortcuts, the Ctrl-Alt-Click and drag right or left to change the size of your brush. And I zoom closer to the image and I start creating the selection by clicking and dragging over the parts that I would like to select. Make sure that you always stay with the brush inside the selection, so don't go outside like this because then you will select parts of the background as well. So I just undo this step. And the Magic Wand and Quick Selection tool works the same. They try to measure the colors that you are clicking on and try to find edges on the image. These little details like the ears will be difficult to select, and usually I don't select them with the Quick Selection tool. I just leave them out and I will come back to them with another refinement technique. So I will quickly select the legs. I just draw over them with the Quick Selection tool, but you can see that unfortunately, the Quick Selection tool also selected these parts between the two legs because the colors of the background there are very similar to the colors of the clothes, and even here, as you can see, now it selected the background. What you can use to deselect parts that you selected quickly with the Quick Selection tool, if you press and hold down the Alt key, you can draw over parts that you don't want to have in your selection, and sometimes it's really fast and it will also find the edges and you can get rid of the selections that you don't want to have. I will come back to this part with another tool, so I think this is a fairly good selection to start with. And my rule of thumb with the Quick Selection tool is that I never spend more than half a minute or a minute for the selection, because the Quick Selection tool is only for creating a quick and rough selection, but then there are other ways to refine it. The second step is usually Quick Mask for me. Quick Mask is a special view that you find here at the bottom of the toolbar. If you click on this, you get a special view where you see your selection and you see the selected parts in colors and the non-selected parts with a red overlay. In this view, you don't need to use the selection tools to change your selection. You need to use the brush tool and draw with black and white. I will zoom closer and you can see there is a color cast on his ear. So I will use my brush tool. I will make it a little bit smaller. And if I use white and I start to draw over the ear, I can get rid of that color cast and change my selection like that. I will show the same thing on another part of the image. I use H, press and hold down the H key, click, and then I position my view to this part. Now we have these little details with the rope. If I draw over them with white using the brush tool, I can quickly show them and get rid of the color cast like this. And if I use black, I just change it with the X key from the keyboard, I can hide these parts that I don't want to have in the selection. So as you can see, it's a really fast way to refine the selection. And also here between the two legs, I will use black to draw over these parts quickly. And actually now I'm making a selection by using the brush tool. Maybe also here on the right I will use white to show that part. If you have a graphic tablet, you can even quickly draw over this part and use the white brush to draw over quickly this one. Even with a mouse you can do the same, but it's a bit more difficult to do this with the mouse. Okay, I zoom out, and I think now we have a really nice selection. So I can go back to the normal view of my selection. To come out from the quick mask mode, I will now use a keyboard shortcut Q. I press the Q and that goes back to the normal view of my selection with the little marching ends. If I press Q again, I can go back to quick mask if I want to refine my selection even more. But I think it's good enough now, so I go back to my selection with Q, and I go now to the masks panel and I choose add a pixel mask to create a mask from this selection. Now we only need to put the new background behind this mask layer. So I go to arrange documents and I choose 2 up. I use my move tool, select this image, drag it to the left. I close this image now, and the new layer, I need to put that behind the mountain here. And I will use my move tool to move this mountain image into place, something like this, where it's believable that the mountain stands on the rocks. If I shift click on the layer mask, we can see the original image. If I shift click again, we can see the changed background. Now if I zoom closer, you can see that we have a really nice selection, but maybe we would like to refine it even more. And for that, you can select the mask and go to Mask Edge option in the Masks panel. And here you can test your selection in front of a black background or any other view options from the view mode. I usually use on black. For example, here around the face we'll see a little leftover from the original background, but in CS5 we have this great new feature called decontaminate colors. If you check that and increase this value, you can quickly recolorize the edges and it will hide those parts. So now if we see before, by clicking on show original, you see we have more colors that we don't need on the edges. If we use the decontaminate colors, they will be more hidden. But you can also use shift edge and move it a little bit to the left to hide even more details on the edges that we don't need. Or you can even use the radius and smart radius together, which is also a great feature. I think in this case, the shift edge and the decontaminate colors together are enough to use. So I will click now to OK, and that is the final result. The workflow that I usually use for selections is that I make a quick selection, then I go to the quick mask, and then I save that selection as a mask, and if I need any more refinements, I go to the Mask Edge option. Making selections are a huge topic in Photoshop, and you can use lots of tools and techniques to create your selections. The main thing that you should remember is that it's always good to combine these tools to make selections, and to always start with a rough selection and then refine the selection. Also, I suggest to use a mask from your selection instead of deleting parts from your layers, because using a mask is the non-destructive way. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and in the next episode I'm going to teach you another very important tool called the pen tool. Thanks a lot for your attention, and see you next time.